Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode. The topic that has arrived and the name of this talk is Aviating the Abstract and Aviating Abstraction. And so I feel there's 8 billion human beings here, and not a lot of human beings are commenting on this idea of the inner realms and how to navigate in it. And so I felt, let me share how far I see it might help other pilots to see more out of the terrain of the inner realms. First thing I gotta begin before I speak about abstraction is that just like when I use the term pilot, the pilot has access to the headquarters. What I mean by that is that it's in contact with the airport. It's aware. Other airports are aware of its presence. Now, the way I use the concept of the pilot, pretty much, it's just like how some people are meditators. I see pilots, but the way I see it is a pilot. Every person, their attention is piloting their experience of their existential plane of existence. So first, we need to acknowledge in front of our eyes, this is the objective realm. This is that which is physical, objective. Whether you open your eyes, you can close your eyes, open it, the phenomena is there. Reality is kind of like free imagination, like given imagination. It's like something there before you imagine it, you can say. Because one view we can think we're real creatures and we feel we are imagining, or we can feel reality is an act of imagination. Now, the pilot has to be aware of the plane of existence. And here is where, if you have been a human being, and if in everything you have attempted to do in this life, you have thought of a self to pilot in your inner realms, you can't pilot it as a self, firstly. What does that mean? At most, the most reducible selfhood I find in the inner realms, the simplest selfhood that remains, is geometrical. So unless you can close your eyes and find a sort of comfort with being a geometrical shape, I feel that there isn't, the inner realms have a sort of limitation. You see, it's just like a soccer player. If the soccer player knows what it's doing on the field, it will move, it will go with rhythm. If the pilot knows where they're piloting, they will pilot smoothly. If the pilot is just free-flowing, at some point gas will run out and there will be a crash. So if there is any human being interested in working with the inner realms and the unknown, it is not one where it's for an individual, for a self. That means you need to have a certain comfort. I find, at least, this is how Mr.Within is introducing the world to this. So now I want to make this as simplified and practical as possible. What I mean, we as human beings, we move around through the day. Our communication, our meaning, the stories of our reality. Guys, I'm just going to make this full screen so I don't get distracted by the chat. But people, feel free to share comments in the chat at intervals. I will look at it. But this part's very important. I gotta have the attention on the inner realms. Okay, so I want to make it real, so we gotta start from a very real situation. I think most people can acknowledge, like walking, like this is probably real for most people, walking in the sidewalk. Just walking outside and seeing other human beings. Now, what is the game? So I told you first we got to have the foundations very solid and firm to some degree, for the liftoff. The foundation is that we appear as a subject behind our eyes to ourselves. In front of our eyes, others appear as an object. But you see, so first thing about even being able to pilot your inner realms, you got to notice what the inner realms are. And you got to start noticing how your mind throughout the moment, what is the mind's movement and what is the world's movement. Now, it is true that after some point it's very hard to wonder about how the mind is separate from the world, because it's kind of like a candle in a dark room, isn't it, our awareness? In my own experience, I reached a certain question in the linear simulation of a life I was living, where it was as if something in the way I had accepted life stopped making sense, or I just realized it was unknown. So I'm speaking to mystics here. If you're not inclined towards the direction of these talks, I advise people don't have to listen. I'm speaking to just a group, all the human beings on this planet who are interested to discover the nature of mind. Right now, if you went back to primitive cultures and you started singing opera for them, they would think you're some alien or this is some weird, possession or something. They couldn't understand it. It would be too overwhelming for them to be able to comprehend. No, this is just a person doing something with their voice. I can't sing opera, by the way. I was just using that as an example. So once the human being excuse me, once the human being has found a comfort with objective phenomena and has observed the nature of the temporary and has studied mortality and has come to the recognition that this life is an opportunity, then I would say it's safe at that point to kind of wonder about your inner realms. The inner realms are very infused with nature's mind. Another way one can explain the inner realms is it's like you remembering who you were before you were a thought. And if you remember, you're going to, like right now, I'm just explaining something. But if the person remembers who I'm speaking to, and it's very hard. It's very hard to speak about movement, usually. Once there's contentment with the objective realm, then the person starts wondering about subjects and their nature. If you really want to dive into it straightforward, you got to practice stillness and silence, and as you're still and silent, you begin noticing after a while what is you and what is not you. That means in what streams, that means, how is it? Okay, you know how you get on a subway, and when you're in the subway, you trust it. You trust the subway, like you're in the subway booth, and you sit down, and you trust the subway booth, and the subway just goes, after a while. So you know how when the subway is in motion, the person has the comfort of their chair? It's similar like that, at least the way I've experienced the inner realms. But it's rhythmic and it's with attention. It's as if in front of our eyes, we're more real to ourselves as an object, as stuff. Behind our eyes, there is We are, you're as, you're real. Behind your eyes, you're unreal. In front of your eyes, it's object oriented, it's three-dimensional to some degree. In the inner realms, it's evocational, attention oriented, and that attention is more awareness through space than movement, a body able to move in matter. So the way, here's the thing, it's like we're not that advanced. I don't want people to get like, you know, like X-Men about this. But what it is I feel that when the human being is still enough to watch what they are, they notice movement. If they notice the movement of subjective phenomena, they will eventually notice what is witnessing that movement. And that which is witnessing that movement is an attention that is present. That's it. That means I would say, it's like even if a person touches their body, sure, you can say, okay, I'm touching my body, I exist. But I'm saying it's like the only thing that I feel really exists is an instantaneous awareness to being. So, you know, people go on thinking of themselves through different personas, different personalities, different ideological perspectives of who they are. You know, human beings wear many masks before they have to take off the final mask. You know, the elemental realm. You know, we have to be so advanced that, you know, it's like in our withdrawal from this world, the pilot salutes the passengers and, you know, moves up. I remember I think I was in, where was I? Somewhere in America. Florida. Was it Florida? I think it was Florida. And I'd gone there to see family. And when I was there, I had this very unique experience. This very unique experience where as I'm walking down the street, imagine your inner realms is a copy-paste version of what you see in your outer realm. Imagine right now, if you want to know what your inner realm looks like, let's say if you close your eyes, you still see where you are in the outer realm. You know? If you keep your eyes closed, you got to open them up to, again, re-evoke the moment. You know? I was walking in the street. In my inner realms, I saw a geometrical shape, this inverted triangle. I think of it as a visualization that happened on its own. And as I saw this geometrical shape, this is in a three-dimensional context, as the geometrical shape, from every corner of it, a line extended forth to the end of the block. To the end of the block where I was walking the street. And it was, of course, abstract. It was a sort of piloting of the inner realms. But I would say it was the experience of it was that my attention could visualize through every point of that geometrical shape. It was literally an event where I felt behind my eyes, I had as many eyes as that geometrical shape had points. Just viewpoints of sight. You see? The interesting thing about the mind is that it's like a picture with a frame, but the frame is blurred. It's unknown. And it's like we're constantly searching for pictures and we're getting framed based on the picture of the outer realms. The yogis were so advanced, these human beings, that they would say the first thing that the sadhu had to do was to find their divine remembrance. And that divine remembrance wasn't for a personality. And so we as human beings must have the courage to walk 1,000 miles beyond our language. We have to think about way beyond our language. You know why? Because the future generations will do it eventually. We can just get a head start. So for me right now, life, sure, it has certain inefficiencies, certain efficient moments, but really what it is you look at what the future may do. Because for me, it's like you're studying the market. That means so many people, they look at stock values. You know, they look at the stock market and they look at the values of the stock. But I think that's ridiculous. I think that's fine. But the thing is, You got to see way ahead. That's why I'm saying people are taught in school, think one step ahead, be one step ahead of everybody. I'll tell you that's garbage. Be 10 steps ahead. Attempt the farthest you can go. Be that human being that represented the species in the dimensions of their eyes. You see, we are ambassadors of the earth wherever we go. That means in whatever inner realm plane you may find yourself, at any moment the soul can roar. In any altered state of mind. It's the roar of the soul, because the altered state is the game of the mind. You know? Terence McKenna, I honor this man for his many of his lectures, but his views stray away from mine in certain degrees. And Terence McKenna, this dude gave a psychedelic plant to like a Zen monk and asked the Zen monk, what do you see? What's the experience? And the Zen monk responds, it's the lesser lights. And ever since Terence McKenna said that, I have been wondering why. How is it the lesser lights? How is it the lesser lights? Do you know? Is it because it's dependent on some phenomena at the end of the day? Is true liberation an unconditional state, a state where the creature is defined by no condition? Because that seems to be the way we have defined God, have we not? We have defined God as the idea that has not been created or destroyed. You know, it's something that just started. It started us. That means they asked, like, who's the true father of humanity? And little did we know, it's infinity. You know, infinity is our dad as a species. The point is, guys, if we were animals, if we were savage animals, there'd be nothing to say. You know, that means if we were truly violent, a violent, kind of self-destructive natured species, then there'd be no point of talks. You know, you just I'd play as a savage. That means if the world right now, the civilization wasn't this civilized, and I was born, let's say 1,000 years, not 1,000, but let's say a couple thousand years earlier, where it's still savageness and violence and all this, I wouldn't care to change the world. You know, because you can only change the world you see. Have you noticed? Even if you try. You know, and even Rumi scolds the youth of this world. You know, wisdom ups the youth, wisens the youth of this world, you know. Selfhood is the lesser lights, that's why the monk said it. The Zen monk told Terence McKenna that's the lesser lights. You know why? Because there is one greater light, and that monk either should have gotten enlightened, incredibly aware by that plant, or he shouldn't have. You know? And so that's the thing. You see, human beings are, of course, I mean, everybody eats vegetables. You know what I mean? So it's like Native Americans, like native shamans, they just ate like different vegetables. Of course, reality is changing. You know, it's changing in many ways. I feel if we bring in the game of the individual, there's just endless ways. I don't know how many people ever wonder about their destiny and realize it can happen in endless ways based on what you do. You know, that means really when I wake up in the day, first there was this expectation to go chase after what you want to succeed at, but then it was like, wait a minute. What if the way to live does not just originate from the domain of my own inner realms? That means it's a fascinating moment when you realize no one on this planet can know the unknown. At most, you can feel like the unknown moving knowledge, I would say. I feel people who have been listening to these Mr. Within talks, I think most likely your inner realms have been abstract enough. Now, the only factor missing is that means I think most people listening to this talk, I think you're aware of your inner realm. You know, you're aware of it. But the thing is now, if you want to pilot, you got to wonder about something that is more important or was important before the idea of you existed. This is a mystical talk, guys. Keep that in mind. This talk isn't for everyone. But it's strange, but it's like a initiation of nature into your inner realms, and it only happens when you start going at your pace. Believe it or not, I think every human being on this planet is a potential genius, but the issue is they don't have the right speed and direction. That means these are the two things. If the human being figures out the velocity to their life, I feel they will function properly. Now, that direction to how to navigate your inner realms, if you start from stillness, the world is the pilot, you become the co pilot if the world moves first. But if you close your eyes and you move first and you just pose a question for yourself and attempt an answer and then pose another question, attempt an answer, and eventually walk through the geometrical tunnel. The inner realms become accessible. For me, the event that really made me notice the inner realms was geometry moving before my own thought. That means unconscious, living visualizations of geometry that just I just noticed. You know, I don't know what it is. I think it's like, guys, you have to have a contentment beyond location. That's why I said we have. I just noticed the chat section. Listen, I'm saying we notice the objective realm. It's like you're comfortable, you've explored the island you're on, now you're wondering if there is a dimensional island, you know? Because the way it feels to me is that the imagination is a private room that an attributeless attention evokes vision. Guys, it's getting a bit chilly. I'll be right back. Okay, guys, I'm back. Alright. Where were we? Yeah, so I'm just saying geometry had a very significant role in me noticing that there is something moving, and the most familiar way to kind of make it a pattern is geometry. You know? That means if human beings create an incredible geometric language, I feel it will be um, one step closer for preparations for a potential extraterrestrial contact. You know, I think the idea is that we are here to learn from not just one dimension of life, as if all of this is one world. We're here to look at it from two dimensions, as if we are in an individual, like we are a simple self in an unknown world, and we are a complex self in a simple world. You know, I feel we have to create a concept. I feel we have to create the concept of mind fields. I think every human being has a mind field. MIND-FIELD. Now, this mind field is very crucial. I feel this mind field has to do with how you are aware of at the center of the mind not being a form. I think any human being who notices that the origin of their attention is not a form, then you find a certain comfort with watching. And when your eyes, that means even being able to watch your interrupts. The issue is not even aviation piloting, it's being able to keep your eyes open when your eyes are closed. You know? Now, movement is the generator of meaning. I have to say that there is an additional dimension to everything I'm saying, and it has to do with the intuitive welcome of the unknown. And this goes for many human beings, because to wonder about the fabric of the mind, you're looking at something closely and wondering how it's weaved, how it's positioned together. And when we look into the mind, we find awareness to self. And this self that has become aware was aware as world. So the question of, was awareness here, could mind have existed before matter? That question is supremely unknown, and one of the greatest questions in philosophy, I think. Because the mind appears as a field. That means in the inner realms, I'm not like Superman wearing a cape. At most, I'm telling you, a geometrical shape if I have to be. If I can't just be the simple attention, I evoke. Because I don't know, but in many moments in my life where there's been a challenge, what it has felt like was like beams of life. So imagine beams of light from the ground suddenly breaking out and going towards the sky. You know, it's not the planet is exploding, but light is running towards the sky, let's say. It's like this, it's evocational. Evocational also, that's where I find the source of intensity and impact comes. That the person in their inner realm can confront an intensity of potential reality unimaginable in front of the eyes of the person. That means I find it's supremely fascinating that if we had a third person angle, that means imagine your life, you've been looking through your two eyes the whole time. You know, from your eyes, first person view. Now imagine simultaneously there was another screen. That was showing you a third person view of yourself. So as if like a drone was hovering, a small spherical drone was hovering. That like that, in my science fiction, those are the phones of the future. They're just these tiny spheres that are like ultimate surveillance machines, so everybody's protected wherever they go. You know? And the drone sphere is above their head, So it becomes a security camera at all times. So if you could simultaneously see your third person life and from first person, it's very easy to be a thought. But if you were seeing yourself third person, you can't forget your image. Do you see? That means it's kind of good we're not looking 24/7 in the mirror, because then we can wonder. Sometimes life is good that it has unknown dimensions. Can you imagine if everything was known? What would that be? Like, are we in like this static film in the cosmos that never changes? I feel I'm glad the unknown is here. And so the inner realms, there's four types of yoga. Some people, through their nature of what is important for you, really, you need to ask that question, and then whatever answer comes. Some people who work is for them important. The yogi back in the day would say go the path of karma yoga. That means study how your memories are being designed in accordance to your action. Because Aviating Abstraction, I think I'm going to change the title to that. You are a pilot, but if you don't know your own hands, you cannot pilot. And those hands behind your eyes are the nature of your mind. And if you are able to open the story of your life as a gift and to see what is really inside, you will find the soul of knowledge, the oversoul of knowledge. And once you find the oversoul of novelty, that means you will unconditionally have access to your potential. But the way you have found that access is because you have wandered beyond what has become kinetic, what has been expressed. So you don't have to care for too much the images. Like, this isn't lucid dreaming. This is the tears of a mystic being shared. I ask myself, in what other way can human beings evolve? You know? Like, what is excuse my language, but is the civilization going to just, excuse my language, but fucking party till the extinction? Like, or is there something more? Or should we care about how far the ability of the human being can go? It's a dance. This moment right now, you think I know? You think me sitting here? I'm an ant on an anthill, and I know I'm an ant. That's why I'm comfortable regardless of whatever people tell me. But some people who feel they are kings of the anthill, it's as if, like, go worship your shadow in a dark room. It's easier. You know? Power is not the purpose of this. You can't pilot properly if you seek power. You have to, I call it the decency resonance, the sincerity resonance, the honesty resonance, whatever you like to call it, but just a version of you that was it's like the feeling you had before life resisted you and you resisted how you interpreted life. You resisted life based on how you interpreted life. You see, we are very complex creatures, but complexity arises from simple principles. So when we want to work with our inner realms, I was like, what are the tools accessible? I can use words as I'm doing now. I could use a mathematical language, which I sometimes evoke, at least not, And I noticed the other thing is geometry. That means right now, how many things can you tell the person to visualize? They can visualize an image. They could visualize geometrical shape. They could pretty much its symbol. It's like somehow we accumulate our environment. It's as if there was this Japanese narrative, Dragon Ball or something, and there was a character in that, the main character Goku, where he would suddenly, it's based on this Japanese comic book, and in this, the character would say, everybody, lend me your energy so I could defeat the bad guy. And everybody would suddenly lend the energy, and then his energy would increase, and then he would confront that situation. You know? So he would attract energy. So in your inner realms, your attention, the way it's attracting energy, it becomes the thought instantly. I don't know how many people are following what I'm saying, but I'm going to try to make it a bit simpler if it's coming across complex. I'm just saying we're a human being, that in front of our eyes, pretty much we can either move objects or we can move subjects. We have been moving objects in the conscious waking state, considering ourselves as objects. We have been, and sometimes as a subject, even moving an object for some people. But when it comes to the inner realms, it is a subject considering an object. And remember, subjects change at a quicker speed than objects do. This is why you don't see the outer realms and your inner realms exactly. At most, you might see a subtle flash. So believe it or not, the mind is such a powerful, or let me say, it is such aligned with the presence of nature. You might not believe it. You could be the worst person or the best person on this planet, regardless of your action and your path. If you just go sit in nature and just for a moment wonder about this film you're in, the fascination of that will take you to the inner realms, and not only will it take you, but you will realize nature is subconsciously training you and preparing you for the next step, whether you know it or not. The mind is so advanced that it's as if the mind loves the body. So the mind is endlessly, imagine your mind, any problem you look at, imagine your subconscious since, let's say, poetically, hypothetically, 2 weeks ago as prepared for this moment. I feel we are the simultaneous being of an existential dimension that we don't move, and an experiential field dimension where we move. It's fascinating. Human beings, it's as if the child is born, the doctor slaps it on its back, it breathes, it becomes the shape of the spoon that fed it. And it runs into the world, trying to be a success of its own inner realms, only to discover that the world has its own laws, the world has its own mind, and if 8 billion human beings can't get excuse my language, we can't get their shit straight, and we can't build an advanced civilization, what other way do you see it happen? Whoever's out there in the cyberspace listening, what other way do you see this civilization becoming advanced? The only other way I've potentially seen it is that we are so lazy that we just put all our effort to building an invention that will invent everything else. So pretty much AI is going to build an advanced civilization, and we're going to kind of like miss out on even building our own civilization, which would be tragic to some. Because you think of this idea of peace, but then you think of the idea of growth having to do with expansion. And so it's very complex, especially in the capitalistic society. One thing that capitalism, if this system requires to study, is the influence of overpopulation. Do you know? Because it's like some people don't get on the ship, and so I don't know what it is, but I feel like I remember seeing this picture that made me laugh. It was a meme on Facebook. Um, the picture was a picture of Earth from like outer space as just this green, you know, blue, white circle, and on top of the meme, it had written trillions of dollars in debt. And I was like, that's jokes. We're just creatures on a rock. Like, there was a point where we had to, like, hunt animals. You know, an intelligent system uses all its resources efficiently. That means tyranny is the stupidest use of power. It's like like tyrants in the world. Like, I don't know what the hell they're doing. It's like children who got slapped too hard when they were kids. So, guys, in the chat section, somebody says, Persona says, how come taking psychedelics makes us see geometry everywhere? Let me tell you why. Because you are geometry before you're your personality. It's the language of nature. It's the language of zooming in to the essence of the world. Geometry is divine. The outer realm, guys, the best metaphor I've shared, I feel, an incredible metaphor for what I think is happening in this world, that in front of our eyes, in regards to the outer realm, we're all in the same physical multiplayer online map, cyberspace map. But the person sitting in the screen, so what does that mean? I feel our imaginations, our personalities, they are non-local. They are a phenomena in a location, therefore they are not the location. So they appear as another space. So I feel that we as a species are ready to acknowledge that there's incredible uncharted territory in regards to how far man's psychology is dependent on the language. And really, every person is an explorer of the species. Go figure something out, and I call it hunter-gatherers of the inner realms. I feel this is what all the philosophers in the world wanted from the world: people to wonder why again. Anyways, guys, I'm gonna end the talk here. Thanks for tuning in. Out of curiosity, would people be interested in a Discord event as a different video? Like in 10 minutes, if I set up a Discord event, would the audience be interested? Okay, guys. Anyways, I'm gonna end the talk here. Actually, let me see. Let me say a bit more. What was the subtitle? Oh, there we go. Geometrical navigation through attention. So this, again, I think I've explained it well so far, but it's pretty much this idea of your attention is your presence. The movement of phenomena in your attention generates your personality in accordance to the environment and where you are. Just like in Japan, they have a saying. They say, "The man is the room he's in." You know. So, anyways, guys, I'm gonna probably set up a Discord event in 10 minutes. Just wait for the video, and it's gonna come. So, one last thing I have to say. Will Durant has this quote, which I've scoped a lot of quotes in history, and I've noticed this, and it says, "Knowledge is the eye of desire and can become pilot of the soul." Now, if the knowledge is the eye of desire, what is the unknown the eye of? And perhaps that eye is not an eye, it is not an ideology. That means we are not moving in our inner realms to find an ideology. We have studied our outer realms and we're wondering if a cup was filled to the brim, where is that surplus going? In that way, whatever happens in the inner realms, the person can just revert to the outer realms within any altered state. If the person requires stability, they just have to declare what they are. They have to build in that state. You know, have you heard that saying? They say when you roam. What does that mean? In your inner realms, your attention, so functions attention. If your attention in your inner realms arises in a geometrical reality, be geometry. You know, because if you realize that attention is not the form, what can touch you? What can there be? You're realizing it. You're on your attention as if it's a flying horse. So find a rhythm of trust of your inner realms, and then the piloting happens on its own. Because on some level, don't forget, a lot of systems and things that happen in the inner group, like your breathing, your heart, they're just happening naturally. You don't think about your heart when it happens. The inner realms were meant to happen just like that. It's not that we need to think about it, you know. And anyways, guys, so that's the end of the talk. Pretty much. Thanks for tuning in. In 10 minutes, there's gonna be another live stream, and I'm gonna share the Discord link. So thanks for tuning in so far.